Hello, the world. That's right. This is going out to the whole world, right? Yes. Welcome to our recording this Monday evening of the On the Ball podcast, number 125. So that's exciting. Are you going to be in for a treat? I mean, always in for a treat when we do these, aren't we? But this will be like a real extra treat on all the other ones that maybe have gone before, but maybe not all the ones that then are to come. I feel like I'm digging a hole. So let's move on from that. Here's who we've got on tonight. There they are. We have Steve Sanders, Dan Brigham, and debutant Liam Ray, or Wadmin, as you probably all shouted at him for 8 years. So that's exciting. I think you're going to get that in the actual intro as well, Liam, so get prepared for that. There they all are. If you're watching, thanks for joining us tonight. Send comments and questions in. Myself and Steve, he says, just to remind Steve. He's nodding, that's good. We'll be monitoring those, and they will help fill in the shortcomings in my script, of which there are many. And there'll be plenty of things that I probably haven't thought about covering. So if you do want to bring anything up, you feel, why do they never talk about this? Take matters into your own hands and bring them up. And you know what? If you do, we will have huge respect for both that decision and where we go from there. Obviously, long-time watchers of the pod will know that this is the point where I try and share the pod to Facebook, although that doesn't appear to be allowing me to do this immediately, which will obviously probably mean that you're all now fearing the fact that we might be here for the next 20 minutes while I do it. But it's okay. Like the true professional that I am, I have worked the way around it, and we are now in full flow. It was interesting as I went onto Facebook, there appeared to be a screenshot of an Instagram post from Todd Cantwell. Maybe we should talk about that on the podcast. Maybe we shouldn't. Who knows? Perhaps more importantly, who cares? It'll be exciting. Right. I'm almost there. I tell you what, if you haven't watched my Tifo IRL video on Burnley, now that you've seen them absolutely dismantle Norwich, you should probably go and watch it because they did me a good turn, Norwich, in showing up just how good Burnley were. So there we go. But I should probably save that for the podcast. That is done. You'll be delighted to know, which means I can stop waffling on. 2 minutes 39. That's all right. It's certainly taken me longer in the past. Let's crack on. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Good evening to you all. Let's rock in a podcast football sense of the word. Enjoy it. Hello all and welcome to edition 125 of On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that should probably release more quick statements itself. I'm Michael Bailey, I cover the Canaries for The Athletic, and I hope this finds you safe and well. On the way, Burnley learnings, 96-point train abandoned, and Bristol bound. Are you not entertained? We'll work through all that and more with our guests, who are Norwich numberwang chief at NCFC Numbers, also known as our very own Steve Sanders.
Good evening, Michael.
We have former Norwich City head of content and program editor, Dan Brigham.
Hi, Michael.
Great job on unmuting yourself there, Dan. You did it before I got there. And making his debut is the one you spent ages tweeting admin to, and another former Norwich City press officer. So many of them, all with different job titles. I don't know how that works. Anyway, it's a very good evening to OTP debutant, Liam Ray. Hello, Liam.
Hello, Michael. Hello, everyone.
There we go. That was seamless. Well done, everyone. Congratulations. Thanks for joining us, everyone out there. Hope you're very well. Whether you're live or watching this at some point during your week. Thanks for joining us. We've got plenty to talk about, as always. But Liam, first of all, I'll start with you. Welcome. Do you know why we have so many members of Norwich's media team join us when they leave?
No idea. I think the good words just spread along about how great this podcast is, and we all want to be a part of it, don't we?
See, that's why they all come on. They all say nice things all the time. I love it. Well, it's lovely to have you here, Liam. how have you enjoyed watching Norwich a little bit in your spare time, or have you just like binned it off? And you still work in sports marketing, so you're still a big deal.
Big deal. Not sure about that. Yeah, I mean, tried to keep up to date with how things have been going on. Obviously, enjoyed not having to travel to games every single weekend, which obviously was fun, but also sometimes a little break would have been nice now and again. So it's been, it's been like nearly a year now since I left. So time has certainly flown, but it's been nice to watch on from afar now. So
love it. Just imagine if Pep Guardiola became Norwich City manager, and given his comments about having to go from Manchester to London, which was basically, it's a very long time and they were all very tired. Imagine if he had to travel everywhere from Norwich all the time. I think it would probably be very difficult for him. Dan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Michael. Good, thanks. Yeah, I imagine you listen to Liam there thinking you wish you could probably have a little break occasionally from having to travel to Norwich matches.
Absolutely not. I love it. I love the traveling. I love rocking up at a football match, watching Norwich City play a football match,
driving home from Preston, getting home at 3 a.m.
Do you know, I can't remember. I may have said this. So obviously, epically brilliant job by Steve hosting last week. Thank you, Steve. Hello, Steve. We'll speak to Steve in a second. But there he is. The journey to Preston. I managed to listen to basically the entirety of the Beatles' discography, which was amazing fun.
Is that there and back or just one way?
Must be.
No, there and back. Yeah, there and back. Wow. But and I know loads of Beatles songs, but it was that was very. It was nice.
That's the most Partridge thing I think you've ever said.
I know loads of Beatles. I agree. Yesterday.
What's your favourite Beatles album, Michael? Greatest hits.
Do you want to or let someone know your great? Wait, stop it. Well, this date back. Oh, this is probably not very exciting, but this dates back to when I was at school, and a very good friend of mine who used to be in a band together. We would sort of have debates about the Beatles and Pink Floyd and stuff like that. And I'd never really listened to the Beatles albums per se, not all of them. So that was my car journey. So long and short, I couldn't give a toss about the football, but it's great to listen to the Beatles albums on the way to and from the games.
Maybe Pep does the same thing.
Maybe.
Pep's an Oasis guy, isn't he? He's a self-proclaimed Oasis guy.
Indeed, yes. That and financial doping. But maybe that's for another day and definitely another podcast. Steve, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I suppose for the record, we should say that Pep's probably not been involved in the financial doping himself.
No, it's all alleged.
Just for the lawyers out there, just in case there's Man City lawyers are listening.
Just lots of allegations.
I'm very well, thank you. Well, perfectly timed, because I was going to ask how you are, because you've not been too well lately. So you've teed yourself up nicely with that cough.
I produced that cough at just the right time. We're fine. We're soldiering on. Hopefully, this isn't going to be like Billy Gilmore trying to play against Aston Villa at Carrow Road during the Premier League season, where he was vomiting at half time. So hopefully we'll be okay.
Hopefully this illness will be as quickly forgotten as Billy Gilmore's time at Norwich City was. So
bless him. Sterling job last week, Steve. Thank you so much for controlling this podcast ship. Also delighted to see your Christmas tree has now gone.
Yes. God, has it been that long since?
I don't know. It's all a haze.
We were last on together. Yeah. I usually do keep it up, but this year just thought I'd have it down by February.
Yes, well, there's a joke there about Norwich City, but we're not going to make that, obviously. Right, for those watching us live on your chosen social media platform, we also want to hear from you during this podcast recording. It can be on absolutely anything I've written. Maybe keep it to football, probably more relevant. But, we've already started talking about the Beatles, so fill your boots, do what you want. And if you want to contribute, but are not listening live, and you're listening in the future, as we record, then that's fine. You can get in touch with us then as well. Just email us with your words, whatever words they are, whichever order you like to write them in. But again, preferably so they make sense. The address is Twitterkers, Twitter KERS @icloud.com. I've already had some lovely messages in, so we'll go through those over the course of the pod. But for now, I reckon it's time to crack on with this week's Headline Act. Yes, indeed. I've rarely known a game to carry so much excitement and anticipation before it as Burnley came to Carrow Road. There was even the suggestion that they might have a bit of illness just to make life even more in Norwich's favour. There was no real illness that prevented any players from playing in the end, which was classic. They all just trundled off the team bus when they arrived at Carrow Road, dear Burnley. And then the football was kind of a bit deflating too. There's been lots of sort of mixed response to it, I suppose, on social media. It was just slight regression to the mean of pre-David Wagner, I suppose it's fair to say. Steve, how are you feeling about it? How are you feeling about that game? How were you feeling when you rocked up at Carrow Road? Explain your situation, if you like, add some colour. And then by the time you left Carrow Road, where were you at?
I mean, how deeply do you want me to go into? I'm not really. I'm more of a numbers guy. I don't really want to. Don't like to add colour to the podcast. It's very binary.
Keep it to entertainment.
Okay.
Don't go too deep. We don't. It's no therapy session. I'll get onto the therapy session with Dan. That's fine.
Okay. Well, I'd like to think the numbers are occasionally entertaining, but anyway, I'll answer your question. I have to. I obviously reality check clearly, but after what were two very, very encouraging performances, but I kind of think, I'm acutely aware this is a Norwich City podcast. If I've learned one thing from doing this for 3 years, it's that. But I do think we should start with the opposition on this because they were absolutely brilliant. It's pretty rare that we get turned over in the Championship at home, even with our bad home form. We don't normally tend to get really battered by teams. But I just thought Burnley were superb from front to back. They pressed us excellently. Obviously, we were kind of the architects of our own downfall. I'm sure we'll come on to that. I thought the way they played out from the back was kind of a lesson in how to do it, and probably something that we should aspire to. And even though the 3 goals that they scored were kind of preventable and nothing special, I just thought they kept us at arm's length for the entire game, really, and never really allowed us to start playing. So I think you have to approach it with that context. I mean, they'll probably go on almost certainly and surpass the totals that we got in both our promotion seasons. And in all honesty, ought to be potentially looking at the 106 points that Reading got, because they are up now. So that should be there. Well, they're not actually up, but as good as that should be their expectation, I think, because I really thought that they were a different level. So I think we won't play another Burnley again this season. Clearly, there are lessons to be learned from that game, but I think you'd almost rather learn them now than get further down the line and realise actually maybe we're not up to it after all. So Wagner will have learned a lot from that game, but they won't play another opposition like that again this season. So even though we weren't really at it, I'm not overly concerned. It's more a case of how we bounce back from it, really.
I mean, they did look like a Premier League team, I thought, for a lot of the game, Dan. And I appreciate that they probably didn't have any. They were quite limited in the number of really big chances they had, but also you have to take into account that they literally spent most of the game ahead. So you can't just ignore that. They wouldn't have played in the same way had the game still been goalless, I think. So I think if you take that into consideration, the way they moved the ball and just what they were doing was hugely impressive. And for me, I find that quite deflating. So I don't know how you feel about it, Dan, because we've seen Norwich do this. We've seen Norwich be that team and then fail to kick on. And I'm probably quite struggling with what on earth happens now? Because I feel like I've got other questions here that I'm now addressing, but I almost have to get to it. It's like,
which one do you want me to answer?
Because, I don't know what I'm just sort of talking at you now, but where do we go? Where do Norwich go from here? Because let's be honest, they are nowhere near really. Well, it feels like they're not close enough to the team that's going to win this division. So therefore, they've got to be well short of the team they were over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, which I guess when you're sitting 10th in the Championship is obvious.
All the evidence suggests that we are well short of that. But I guess if we're taking it from Wagner coming in, it's such early days yet that how are we supposed to, we can't really kind of measure where we are after his 4th game in charge, one of which was an FA Cup game the day after he'd joined the club. So it's kind of hard. Are you taking it as a season as a whole, in which case we're absolutely miles off where Burnley are? Are you taking it as just Wagner era so far, in which case we are still absolutely miles off, of course. But the positive is that when we've sort of sat here talking about poor results throughout the rest of the season, at no point have we been able to look back at the previous 2 games and talk about how well we played in those games, how many chances created, how many times we got more men into the box, how well we controlled certainly the second halves of those games as well. So that's kind of the key difference. I think we're approaching talking about defeat in a different way now. Whenever we were talking about a defeat before, it was kind of like, well, there's nothing particularly good in our bank to talk about. Whereas now, at least, there is plenty of good stuff in the bank from the last 2 games. What I would say about Burnley, though, they're just supremely well coached. I don't even particularly think that squad is one of the best squads we've seen in the Championship over the last sort of 6 or 7 years, but they've been coached so well that they kind of look like one of the best sides in the Championship for the last 6 or 7 years. I don't think I'll ever see a better Championship side than that Wolves team that got promoted, but this team is well up there with us and the Leeds side that went up, the Newcastle side that went up as well. And that's what can happen when you get a manager in the summer who suits the style of play, who has a very clear idea of playing. That's what can happen. And when he's got good players as well, is that they become a really good, well-drilled outfit. And hopefully that's what we'll be seeing in sort of 3 or 4 or 5 months under Wagner. Whether that gets us into the playoffs or whether it doesn't, hopefully that's kind of, he'll be laying the same kind of foundations as Company's done.
Love that. Time for a quick plug, because I did do some moonlighting for TIFO IRL, and there's a lovely video on Vincent Kompany and Burnley. If you want to check that out, Norwich made that video look very good on Saturday. I mean, it's a fair point, Dan. I probably bring on to you, Liam, because Norwich had 2 weeks and time with David Wagner to kind of look a bit more coherent this weekend. Then maybe they have done at Carrow Road. I mean, there's 2 elements to this, I suppose. There's one is like, it felt disappointing that Norwich didn't seem to have much improvement given that they had the extra week. But also, Carrow Road does clearly seem to be a bit of an issue for Norwich playing at it at the moment. And we've talked about it before, but it's a real struggle, it seems, for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem sometimes when you're going through such bad form at home, that it can, especially when you're not really getting the crowd up for it early doors, you're not giving them anything to shout about, then it's sometimes hard to turn that around when you're in a bit of bad form. But I'm going to make it a hat trick and say how good Burnley are, I'm afraid. I know we're on a Norwich podcast, but
that's fine. They were.
Burnley just throughout this season, I think they've done a great job to sort of keep some of those sort of pros that served them so well for so long in the Premier League. When you look at Ashley Barnes, I think they've still got Cork, Brownhill as well.
They have.
So they've done well to sort of keep the sort of spine of that team there and build in some sort of flair young players around that. Zaroury has probably been one of the best players in the Championship this year. He's kind of like Burnley's Buendia, isn't he? So kudos to them. They're a very good team and they're going to walk the league. But I think in general, I don't think it's a bad thing that Norwich have gone through this, considering obviously the first 2 league games under Wagner, 8 goals scored. Probably maybe some fans were getting carried away into that. They think that the glory times are back after 2 matches, 8 goals scored. But it's probably not a bad thing to sort of, for this game to come in for a sense of realism, to sort of bring everyone down to sort of reality a little bit and understand that this is where the club is at. So I don't think it'll be a bad thing in the long run. But I mean, Burnley, very good team, sort of setting the standard, and that's where you'd like to think Norwich can try get to in the long run. Maybe not this season. Depends what happens in the end. But Burnley, very good team. Sorry, lots of Burnley chat there.
No, it's very well. Burnley were very good. And maybe I'm the one who needs the therapy. Maybe I'm the one who needs to work through the fact that it's like, okay, yeah, that will be exciting if we reach the playoffs.
Well, I think, I mean, the team, Dan's rightly picked out like the Wolves team, but the team that as I alluded to before, was that Leeds team that just played us off the park. And actually I'm not saying we're going to have a season like the one we had that year, but we did that was very much that we just weren't ready at that time to play a team that were that intense and that well coached. I know that was only a few weeks into the Bielsa regime, but that was kind of an exceptional side, or got off to an exceptional start at least. So I do think that to expect, well, I say this with a certain amount of hubris because I thought we might win on Saturday, but I think to expect us to compete with that level of team is maybe slightly unrealistic. I think the interesting thing, and I'd be interested to know what the other guys think of this, really is like Wagner wants us to play out from the back. That seems to be his blueprint. I wouldn't, we weren't constantly going short all the time, but the issue at the moment seems to be that the fans are incredibly nervous at home of us doing that. And I think the fans have got a lot of unnecessary stick at times this season, but I do think it feels really counterproductive to me to be making those, to be kind of moaning and cheering as Omobamidele and Hanley go up the pitch and Krul can finally kick it long as though that's some kind of progress. To me, I don't think it is massively coincidental that we're scoring these goals away from home at the moment, because I don't think it's that fun. It's that much of a fun place to play at home because the crowd want us to play a certain way, and that's counterintuitive to the way the manager wants us to play.
See, you're just echoing the thoughts of Dean Smith, who said you don't want to play at home at the moment. Is he? And he got loads of stick for saying that. Maybe you shouldn't have said it.
I did just do that, didn't I?
But that is the point, and I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, Dan or Liam, but I don't think there's the same level of nervousness, 25, 30 minutes into the game on Saturday, if Tim Krul hasn't made that error, because that sets the tone. And also, I think one of the things we've seen in the last season and a half is Norwich make that mistake. Not necessarily always Tim Krul, but, a short pass that gets misplaced, or Grant Hanley gives a back pass that gets cut out, or Kenny McLean gets robbed. There's probably about 10, I don't know if that's an actual correct number, but I probably would have a good stab at 10 incidents where that has happened and a Norwich player has lost the ball close to their own goal to produce a pretty straightforward shot on the goal that may or may not have gone in. And I just feel that, the team was much more able to do it a couple of years ago, and therefore everyone trusted it. And now the trust has gone in it completely. And the question is, I suppose, is that because of the coaching that's been going on, or because of the quality of the players, Dan?
Well, what a big question. What I would say is the few times that we actually did go long when the crowd were calling for it and Burnley won the header and it came straight back at us, the crowd went very quiet when that happened, funnily enough. Well, it's a combination of things. I think under Smith, I don't think there were many options to play at the back. The movement wasn't there in midfield. Whether that's a coaching thing or a player thing or a bit of both, we'll find out under Wagner. That movement was certainly there against Coventry and Preston, though. We played out the back very well and very quickly as well. Mostly, yes.
But they did still give away, in both games, they still gave away at least one clear shot on goal.
But that doesn't cover what Krul did, obviously, because that wasn't down to good pressing. That was down to, who knows? Like, just not seeing someone. It's Krul at the moment is sort of playing like we've all got a mate who locks himself in the house or forgets their keys, leaves their passport on the plane when getting off, that kind of thing. And Krul is currently playing like that. He did it against Coventry. He did it against Preston. I was right behind the goal when he did it against Preston, when he tried to chip it over someone who was like 8 yards away from him and hit it straight at him. Got away with it, and to some extent, I could see why Wagner was defending him. It is a mistake. It's just, people make mistakes all the time, but when it's happening all the time, you've got to worry about where his concentration levels are at. But that's a separate conversation to sort of Hanley passing it wrong, or Gibson passing it straight to the opposition, or Kenny passing straight to the opposition. What I would say, though, is that Burnley press like a Premier League team. It's rare you get a team pressing as well as they did. And what it did, it sort of exposed Wagner's setup against really good pressing sides. Sometimes if it's not precise, and obviously it's very early yet for Wagner to coach it into them, but we are often short in midfield in this setup when we're being pressed. And I think that came That was obvious on Saturday, and probably improved a little bit when Nunez came on. And although the game was dead there, but he came on and provided another outlet, which was missing before he came on. So I think, but it's just stuff for Wagner to work on, I think, isn't it? Those players have only had 3 games in which to A, press like he wants, and B, get out of the opposition press like he wants as well.
It was interesting. Company said that their press was okay, but it had been better in other games. So I thought it was quite interesting that he picked up on the fact that they're
just rubbing it in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh no, we've been better than that, which is a fair point. I mean, it was quite a big call, wasn't it, Liam, with David Wagner sort of sticking with Tim Krul. I know it wasn't a decision for him at the weekend because Angus has got a hip injury. Hopefully he'll be back in time for next weekend. But he has made Tim Krul his number 1 when it was Angus gone before, and that is a call that he's made. So it's I feel like there's an unsettled element to Norwich's goalkeeping position, and I do feel that teams struggle to look solid when it is like that, even if it is other players making the mistakes.
Yeah, you often need a bit of sort of consistency with the man sort of guarding the goal. But the problem is, like, there's two goalkeepers that have been sort of generally in great form over the last few years. Obviously, Angus, the fans know, and the fans love him quite a lot. And Tim's obviously built up a lot of affinity and a lot of credit in the bank for his sort of performances generally since he's been at the club. So it's a difficult decision to make. I mean, I wouldn't like to be the one picking between the two of them because I think on their day they're 2 top quality goalkeepers. I appreciate, obviously, Wagner's made the decision to stick Tim in, and Tim's probably, there's been a couple of hiccups, but I mean, it's a difficult decision to make. And I mean, a lot of other clubs would be begging to have 2 goalkeepers of this quality, really, generally. So it's a difficult one.
I wonder if other clubs would rather just have 1 of them. That maybe the problem is that there are 2 of them. I don't know. Maybe there wasn't supposed to be them both here now. I don't know. It's really difficult to say. Well, how does this get solved? I mean, keep Tim in and keep playing him. Just to flag up my piece in the Athletic today, obviously, which goes over the issues from Saturday, and the fact that Tim Krul has made 4. What's the stat? Hold on. He's made 4 errors leading to shots so far this season, which is as many as he made in the entirety of 2018-19. And then the following 2 seasons, he made only 2 and then 1. So 3. Whereas the last 2 seasons, there have been more errors. Who's to say how or why? But how do we resolve this, Steve? Or does it in fact get resolved? Does it just?
I suppose it gets resolved if Angus's injury is anything serious. I'm pretty sure Krul's form won't deteriorate to the point where we're genuinely considering putting Mickey McGovern in goal, but who knows? I think if you were to ask Wagner it's been a pretty successful start all in all, hasn't it? But I think the one thing that he probably hit the worst thing maybe in terms of the way we've started. I think he would have wanted it sorted, as in Krul comes in, looks solid, and there's no discussion about it. I think this is kind of the last thing he wants, is for people to still, well, not that he will care about the noise so much, but I think he would have wanted to go, right, Krul's my number 1, and that's that. But it will continue for as long as Tim keeps making mistakes. I mean, just while on those kind of levels of stats, this kind of goes through to the whole team. But who scored do a metric of errors leading to goals. And I mean, it's fairly.
Are you going to do a little charts rundown now of Norwich City's leading culpable players?
Oh no! I mean, we have a leader by quite a long way actually. And that, I mean, looking at it, actually, Tim's made 5 since the back end, since 6 or 7 games from the end of last season. He made 3 at the end of the Premier League.
Well, if you think about the Newcastle game and things like that as well, I don't think anyone in the Championship has made more errors leading to shots.
Which is a concern. But Norwich have made, so in the entirety of the previous promotion-winning season, they made only 3, which is pretty incredible, really. And 2 of those were after they've been promoted. And this season, they've made 7. I mean, and that I think goes back to the passing it out from the back perspective. I still think that can work. We're just not very good at doing it because we tend to give the ball to the opposition quite a lot. So we do need to be better at that. I suppose
in previous seasons we would have had Leitner, Mario, Skip, Kenny, 3 years younger in there, even Tetty, as much stick as he got, he could receive the ball and move the ball on very, very effectively. So we did have very good championship midfielders in there and, picking up those little spaces and making sure the pass was forward rather than losing the ball.
And that I think is... Sorry, go on, Liam.
Or if in doubt, give it to Emi, because
yes,
if no one else was an option, Emi Buendia was the one, like literally, he could take the ball in a tight spot and it would stick to him, he'd turn and we'll probably score from it. So he was that good.
He was.
Emi. As you were saying there, Steve, about errors leading to goals. I think the thing that gets me is that errors leading to shots. Norwich have conceded 80 or made 18 of those errors this season. Next is Rotherham on 9. They've committed those errors twice as much as any other team in the entire division. Watford have made just 2, and that's just shots, just 2 shots from errors from Watford all season. So
is that like a fundamental? Is that a tactical thing, or are players just I don't know, committing like cock ups on a regular basis that we can't account for, or what?
I think having watched them all season, that it's a lot of it has been silly. Just sort of silly, dopey errors, to be really honest. I mean, sometimes maybe it's been because they've taken risks. I mean, you could go back to the Wigan game, couldn't you? The first home game. There was an error in that game that led to the goal, essentially. So it's just whether they've been too exposed at times because they pushed too many players on, which I think happened at times earlier in the season. But then I suppose you get involved in the sort of confidence of the team and what they're trying to do, which again I think does sort of come around to this idea that it's all been quite unsettled, and I suppose the result of that is unsettled football that comes with mistakes. So
one thing I just wanted to ask, and I'd be interested to know if anyone in the comments has any thought on this, is I don't want to keep digging Tim Krul out for it, but I can't remember a more just calamitous ricket for a goal by a Norwich City player. I was really racking my brains. I mean, the only thing I think that comes close that I can think of is the Russell Martin slightly underhit back pass against Liverpool, where James Milner scored. But I can't think of anything that really comes close to just how bad that pass was.
I mean, there has been a few.
He did exactly the same thing again. Was it West Brom in 18-19? I can't remember who it was. Did exactly the same thing from a goal kick, passed it out, opposition scored straight from it.
You might be right, actually.
There was I'm sure there's been a Kenny McLean back pass, hasn't there? Where he started doing this after it. That one. There was Dimi Yanulis's little square ball.
Oh yeah, against Stoke.
That Kenny one when he was who was that against?
I can't remember now, but I think that might have been. Well, I've merged that and the Dimi Yanulis.
Sarah did it against Rotherham away as well this season, which led to a goal.
Indeed. We could list so many of these. We'll make this a podcast special maybe at the end of the season. All the errors that we can recall. But that would be mean, obviously. The 2 corners. I mean, Norwich have a good defensive record at corners this season. Don't slam the computer or what you're listening to. That is just what the fact was. They had conceded the fewest goals from set pieces in the Championship before Saturday. Not anymore. I mean, the second one was a good move from Burnley's part, all around all the statues. I don't know. Is there anything to be said on them, really?
I think maybe if it happens again in the next few games, but as it is, we've conceded 3 goals from corners this season, which is pretty impressive for a team that rarely defends corners well, historically.
Just imagine if we were still bad at set pieces on top of just square passes that went to the opposition every other game.
Yes. I have asked the question here, bright spots. We've been very negative, all very disappointing. And I know Burnley don't count as a bright spot. You can't have them. Can you this one? Dan, you sort of mentioned Nunez earlier.
Yeah, I think, it's an interesting one actually, because obviously it was really... Against Coventry and Preston, it was really effective. Our sort of fluid front 4, with Sarah, Dow, Onel, front 5 actually, Sargent and Pookie was really effective, and Coventry and Preston couldn't pick up our runners. Onel played really well, sort of really narrow, which created overloads, and that just didn't happen, as I think I mentioned earlier. Sort of that's what when this system doesn't work, it looks like we're kind of outnumbered in midfield a lot. So I do wonder maybe if against the better sides or better midfield sides, we might see Nunez coming in that sort of more narrow left position, who's probably, better at receiving the ball than Onel is. God bless Onel, but he is better at receiving it and moving it on quickly. So I do wonder if that'll be a change we make. But it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because they scored 8 goals and could have scored a lot more in the previous 2 games playing that front 5. So I'm not entirely sure Wagner will be looking to change it quickly. One thing I did sort of notice throughout the game was Sargent was taking up really good positions, similar sort of position, similar role that Ashley Barnes was playing for Burnley, actually, sort of behind a number 9, basically playing behind a number 9. Barnes was really effective. They were finding really well, but we struggled to find Sargent, and I thought he was picking up really good positions a lot of the time, dropping deep into a lot of space. And whereas we were finding him pretty well against Coventry and Preston, that didn't happen for many reasons: good press, sloppy passing, etc. And I just wonder if, I think he works there, Sargent. I think he brings that sort of Steeperman energy to that sort of role. But I do also wonder if Wagner is again going to be tempted to play an extra number 10 there in Kieran Dowell, who's obviously started pretty well. And as he seems pretty keen to have Cholis, and we've got Marquinhos now and Pajetas back, whether he wants to play wide men, wider of a number 10 as well. But I hope he doesn't chop and change too much, though, from now on. I hope he keeps it quite settled.
Fingers crossed. Liam, you got
was that supposed to be a positive? Didn't seem very positive.
Yeah. Why not? Let's take it.
Essentially, the positivity is that front 5 has shown they can score goals. We did create the best open play chance, I think, on Saturday. Still, the Dowell opportunity, and we still did get men in the box as well. That last 15 minutes before half time, we looked like a good side for that period when the match was in the balance still. So there's your positivity.
Well done, Dan. Well done. Has he nicked yours, Liam, or have you got a positive?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily on the game, but if you look at the fixtures coming up, they're favourable. So we just played the toughest or the best team in the league, so that's done. And now onwards and upwards.
Crack on. I love that. That's it. Steve?
Well, I for starters,
great noise.
Sound like the noise Daniel Farke used to make. The wah.
That's the enthusiasm we need.
That's the positivity I'm bringing. It's just Farke noises. That's all I've got. I would say this sounds really lame, but just the fact that we gave it a go. I mean, I think back.
Your first noise was better than that.
What? The 2 defeats to Burnley were achieved in very different manners this season, I would say. And actually, I would probably rather lose 3-0 playing the way we did on Saturday than lose 1-0 the way we did at Turf Moor. And we are, I think Dan alluded to this earlier, but we are committing more players forward. I just think we show a bit more invention and intensity around the box than we ever did with Smith, particularly in that first half, as Dan said. So, yeah, I feel like we've come full circle, but just played a good side, didn't we?
Job done. Job done. I mean, absolutely nailed that. Well done. Right. Well, in that case, it leaves us with the things we are not going to talk about. Yes, it's been 2 weeks since I did this podcast, and I can't remember how we abbreviated it, and I didn't want to swear.
Twangta.
Twangta.
Yeah.
Twangta. Thank goodness we've done that. So these are the things we're not going to talk about tonight. Obviously, Todd Cantwell. Well, the transfer window in general, as you mentioned before we went recording, Steve, it actually closed. We haven't done a podcast since, so I don't know how much we need to cover really. But Todd Cantwell has joined Rangers, so he is a Rangers player. That's exciting for him. I think he was their man of the match, their weekend win over Ross County. Saw that on the social medias. And then Todd popped a classic cryptic Todd Cantwell post on his Instagram about the truth will come out of some sort. So there we go. We're not going to talk about that unless anyone wants to say why they don't want to talk about it. No, good. Exciting. I think that's all that deserves. So yes, Marquinhos has come in from Arsenal on loan. So that's good. Yeah, I don't think he's played a lot of football recently, so I'm maybe not surprised he didn't come on against Burnley. But he looks an interesting player. Curious to see him come on and show what he's got. It's exciting. Just this niggle in the back of my head that, you know, we've had to loan a £3 million signing from Sao Paulo by Arsenal, and he will join the £10 million midfield signing in Gabriel. I don't know. It just doesn't quite. I can't. Like, I get it, but it's just like. But you know.
And our £9 million Greek wonder kid came on ahead of him on Saturday as well.
Yeah, which I think is a fitness thing. Whether that will be, I know a lot has been made by a lot of people about how much everyone wanted Christos Solis back, which is great. I feel like everyone just needs to calm down a bit, because
I think people might have calmed down after his 15 minutes.
So was there a fitness issue with Marquinhos that he was worse in terms of fitness than Solis was? Because I don't know. I feel like there might be some double training sessions potentially.
Well, I mean, so Christos has obviously had a bit of a knee injury, hasn't he? He hasn't played that much for Twente, who have been having a really good season in the Eredivisie. He's played a bit. They didn't really seem that disappointed necessarily about him going. I mean, obviously it needed negotiating, because I think the actual clause to recall had expired. And obviously it's really important that it gets bigged up as a really good bring back. This is exciting. Our main man has come back and David really likes him. I just wish there was sort of less noise, and let's just see how it goes on the pitch, I suppose. But maybe that's me. But yeah, it was sort of I hope Christos will find a better rhythm, so we get to see more of him on the pitch.
I mean, I do think back to that Bournemouth Cup game. I mean, that's probably the only game where he has played well. He was really outstanding in that match. That was his first start for us, I think. And I think that's probably where the excitement comes from. There is a player in there. We know there's a player in there, but it's a long time since he's been at that level. And you kind of think Wagner is the coach to hopefully get that out of him, given the way we've seen already how he's improved quite a few of our players quite quickly from the level they were at. I think Solis is going to take a bit longer, because it's been, like I say, it's been a while since we've seen him play well. But normally I'm the same as you, Michael. These players that get clamoured for when they're out on loan, so they're on loan for a reason. But I do feel like there's something there with Solis, and now let's be honest, we've been terrible since he's arrived. So maybe if we get on a roll, then that might help.
I mean, the thing about Christos is, you're right. I thought against Bournemouth he was outstanding, and I also thought he was pretty good again in the Liverpool game in the Cup up until the penalty incident. And I actually thought he did all right up at Newcastle when he got hooked at halftime by Dean Smith as well, because Rashica was out injured. So I really like Christos as a player. I just wish it was sort of funneled a little bit differently, so it wasn't sort of putting it on him, because I think it strikes me as someone who's sort of trying to rebuild and needs rebuilding himself. And I just felt like there was too much around that, and I don't think that's helpful. So I really hope we get to see some really good stuff from him. That would be good. We're not going to talk about that anyway. It was a sustainability game. I should flag up Pledge Ball, which is exciting. Give that a look. Canaries Trust held food bank collections. It was all very wholesome on Saturday. I probably should have biked to the ground, which I know Ed Balls and Alistair Campbell did. They made some cakes in some competition as well for a Sky package, which I tried. All right.
Did Burnley fly down?
No, I don't think they did. I think they were on a.
Did they not?
Did they fly down?
Probably. I mean, I don't know, but probably.
And maybe Sky shouldn't move games to 12:30, so fans from Burnley have to travel down probably individually in cars for games like this as well.
I would say
they're going to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And maybe not move, Sunderland to a 12 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday as well, so people have to drive down rather than get trains.
Pray for Sunderland. And then Norwich City women won 4-3 at the weekend, which is exciting because they are in a promotion campaign, which is brilliant. Natasha Snelling got a hat-trick, 4-3 win over QPR. I think they're playing #United soon, which is a big game. May even be this coming weekend. So I would suggest you go and watch them play. And I'm hoping to make that happen at some point if I can as well. So go support the women because they're having a great season. I'm all for it. Maybe they'll get that game at Carrow Road one day. You never know, maybe. Anything anyone else doesn't want to talk about?
Just a little bit of praise for Norwich City sharp shooting legend Harry Kane for getting his 200th Premier League goal at the weekend, which is great to see. Learnt it all on the grass of Colney, obviously, learning from Grant Holt. And Corberan as well, because he's been linked to Leeds, which would be nice if he did leave West Brom. That might help Norwich City out in their playoff chase, potentially.
Be a great fit for Leeds. How long will Nathan Jones be at Southampton as well? It's quite... I feel everyone knows the Premier League is more entertaining when you're not in it.
The Jones effect might be what puts Leeds off going for a manager from the Championship. But
well, Corberan, of course, has been at Leeds.
He has been at Leeds, yeah. So there is a link.
Oh, and Sinani, he's gone and he's apparently started for Wigan tonight.
He is starting for Wigan, which is a surprising. I was surprised he went to Wigan. Got to be honest, but there we go. He's there, and that will probably be the last we see of him because he will be out of contract in the summer. Someone who isn't out of contract in the summer or next summer anymore is Adam Eder, who signed a new 28-year deal, I think it is, or something like that. No, it's to 2028, isn't it? Is it 2028? I think, yeah.
So it's more likely that it being a 28-year deal.
Maybe. He is contracted to the club for 2 years more than anyone else. So that's exciting. If you want,
Just interest. What, as Liam was there very recently at Carrow, what Adam Eder was like around the place. He was very young by the time I left.
Yeah, very chilled out, very laid back guy, but very talented. Like, there's a very, very good player in there. And when he was coming up through the academy, I think you might have still been there, Dan, but there was a lot of talk around him then, particularly coming through the 16s and 18s. I think he was getting linked with a lot of big clubs. So I know he's had some injury problems, but he's sort of very level-headed, and he's a top player as well. So I really hope he just stays fit now and gets a decent run of games because he can really add something to what Norwich can do. And obviously he's shown, particularly that little spell in the Prem last year when he scored against Everton and he was starting to look really good. And then I think he got that really bad injury. So yeah, just fingers crossed he stays fit and gets a decent run of games now and starts scoring some goals.
The game at West Ham in last January, he was outstanding.
Yeah,
and really unlucky not to score. And I think that's the level. It'll be so good to see him get back to that point. And to be honest, that might take until next season anyway. He's been out for so long. He hasn't really played regular football. But I just hope he gets a proper run now and just stays fit and gets to show what he's got. Because he's still only young, isn't he? 21, I think. So
it was sort of relatively. I think this is right. It's noticeable that Eder has come on for Sargent rather than Pookie under Wagner. Although generally it was the other way around under Smith. That Pookie used to be the one that got hooked. Sargent would go central probably, and then Eder, when fit, would go out wide instead of Sargent. So it's interesting that Wagner's obviously trying him behind Pookie.
It is indeed. Beautiful. Anything else anyone doesn't want to talk about?
Burnley did fly, apparently, according to Matthew.
Unbelievable journalism, Liam. Well done.
That's great.
Well, there we go.
Spotted at Norwich Airport. There it is. So there's your sustainable.
Although, was it
the floodlights were on very early at Carrow Road as well, weren't they? When it was daytime, 11:30 or whatever.
It's almost like the entire thing is totally performative, and actually they don't take any real
Stop
action.
it!
I wouldn't. It's like that. I'm not saying it is that. I was going to not talk about. I don't know whether we can put this down to the wonders of science or it's a miracle from our Lord Jesus Christ. But Aaron Ramsey's powers of recovery. I don't know what that guy has. Don't know who that guy's been praying to, but incredible season-ending injury, and he's back at Borough. Either that or Villa have sold them a dud. And
what went on there, Michael? Come on.
Well, there's a piece on The Athletic summing up the January transfer window. which does explain it all. I think if we break it down, he got injured in November, start of December, had to have surgery, was expected to be out 2 to 3 months. And I think ultimately Dean Smith had gone and the club were like, no, he's a Dean Smith signing, don't worry about it. You know, he might be fit. He could have been fit sort of come February. Maybe it would have been longer, but you know, don't worry about it. He's Dean Smith signing. We'll get someone else in if the new manager wants one. And as it happened, he recovered quite quickly. I think Villa were quite surprised he went back, but were like, yeah, fair enough. He might not play under a new manager. You're right. And then Middlesbrough came calling, and I think he knows. Is it Aaron Danks, who's one of the coaches up at Borough now? He used to be at Villa. And I mean, Villa think incredibly highly of Aaron Ramsey. They think he's a better player than Jacob Ramsey, who was playing regularly anyway. So, yeah. Who's already figured out that narrative come April stroke the playoffs?
Literally as you were talking, that was going through my head.
I mean, I remember when I did get a message from someone that it might be happening, and my first reaction was, "In God's name, what?" But then after that, it was like, "Well, that will be an interesting narrative coming in the season." So, you know, one thing is, Aaron Ramsey deserves no stick for it at all. It's not like he binned it off or said, "Oh, I'm really injured. Can I go back home now?" That just didn't happen. Norwich cut it off, basically.
Is it 2 Premier League loans you're allowed? So we wouldn't have been able to get Marquinhos if Aaron Ramsey had stayed. Is that right?
No, I think it's 5.
Oh.
I think it's loads. I
Not
think
even
it's 2
in
in
the
the
same
Premier
pool.
League.
5.
I think it is 5, yeah. Because you think about how many Villa had a few years ago and stuff like that. I think in the Premier League, it's only 2, and only 2 from the same club or something, or only 1 from the same club. So you can build your team around loans if you want to. Obviously, Norwich don't want to do that.
Yeah, Forest had loads last season, didn't they?
They did, exactly. And what a team they look now, by the way. So yeah, that's all that. That's exciting. Was there something else? Oh yeah. The other thing in the January transfer piece that I did in the Athletic is a little mention of the fact that we have another general meeting taking place at the football club. And no one really wants to talk about what it is. But essentially, the details are in the piece. But essentially, it's shareholders voting on whether the club can issue a set number, like 990 odd thousand, but a very specific number of shares. But they're not going to say who they're selling them to or at what price, which is obviously kind of important details to the shareholders, but they're not going to say that. I guess they might say it at the meeting, which is on next Monday. And also shareholders being asked to waive their right to participate in this share issue. So essentially, they already know who they're going to sell the shares to. If that's not Mark Atanasio, I would be surprised. But there we go. Maybe we'll find out next week.
What does it all mean, Michael?
What does any of it mean, Dan? What does any of it mean?
You
Currently,
invited?
it means 10th in the championship, but that's okay. Right. Well, in that case, I think we've done a pretty good job there. We're definitely not at half time, but let's have a bit of Motti, and then we can move on to this.
This is almost fantasy football.
Yes, it's the excitement of a trip to Bristol City on Saturday, which is good. Chris Martin's not there. He's now at QPR. He left and he's gone there. Tim Closer is no longer at Bristol City. I don't know where he's gone, actually.
Don't know if he's
got
gone
released.
anyway.
It's been released.
Yeah, they
He's
released the
just
pair of
been
them, didn't they?
released. So he's just probably wandering around the country somewhere looking for service stations to eat. Or maybe he's gone camping. I was just aware that was going to start sounding weird. So I was just trying to, he's just
Well, it's
marauding
good job.
the country.
Good job you steered away from that, Michael, by choosing service stations.
Yes. So there we are. Tim Closer. We could talk about Tim Closer marauding around the country, or we could talk about Bristol City away. Choice? Anyone? It's an open choice. We're a democracy here. The home game.
Tim Closer does like to travel, doesn't he? He goes to quite.
Oh, you do want to talk about Tim Closer, right? Okay.
Yeah, he looks like someone that would. I think it's the hair.
Yeah, doesn't go straight to Dubai or anywhere like that. Your classic footballer destination. He goes for a bit of culture.
We can only assume he's in Dis right now, or maybe back home in Switzerland. Yeah, anything anyone wants to say about this game other than it's away from home? So, 4 goals, 3 points, job done.
They're decent. They've seemed to have recovered after a shaky run of games, haven't they?
Very
One.
streaky.
Very, very streaky, yeah. I think if we've got any serious aspirations of hitting the playoffs, then reaching the playoffs, then, and I'm not saying it's a must-win game, but it's once again a must-good performance ahead of this one.
He's owning that one. Who do we pick? Oh, go on. Sorry, Dan. Sorry. Go on.
I was just thinking mentality-wise, what does losing 3-0 at home do to the players? Does it do anything because we're going away and they seem to enjoy playing away, or will it have lasting scars? It's probably a mental thing because we are a better squad and side than Bristol City, so it's really it's up there. It's a mental thing now, I think.
Who are we picking, Liam? Who's playing? Could you still keep it unchanged?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to ask for that.
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, Liam's gone full football manager and he's keeping it the same team. Steve can go out and prove their point after their 3-0 defeat. What would you do?
I'd be reluctant to change it as well, but I think he might.
It's the right answer, Liam. Well done.
I think he might, on the basis that he's picked the same team for the first 3 games, and now after a defeat mightn't be a bad time to shake it up. I wonder if Nunez might come in for Onel, maybe, but then I don't know. I mean, Bristol City are quite front foot, aren't they? So I do think that might play into our hands a bit because, as Dan says, we're man for man, we're probably better than they are. So I'm optimistic about this one, but I think, not conceding a stupid goal in the first 10 minutes would be helpful. But I think it could be another, if we carry on playing the way we have done the last few games, it could be a lot of goals in this one because they score a lot and concede a lot. But I'm reasonably confident, I think, and I'm not really sure why. I think they will bounce back. I think they will react well to that 3-0 defeat. And I do think it's a big game. It's a must-good performance for sure because, Burnley felt like a free hit, but we are starting to lose a little bit of ground if we lose this one.
I'm just looking at that. Yeah, 42 points, 10th position, which is actually 6 points behind Middlesbrough and Luton, who are 3rd and 4th, albeit Middlesbrough have played an extra game. But, this is the 30th game of Norwich's campaign. So we are getting into the third, final third, yeah. Which is something Norwich struggled to do for most of the campaign, or some such joke. Out of interest, so Norwich's fixtures, Liam, you mentioned the big 5 coming up. It's away at Bristol City, home to Hull, away at Wigan, home to Birmingham, which is the rearranged game because of Norwich's FA Cup failure, and then at home to Cardiff. So I don't know what the average position of those teams are, but it's below Norwich.
In fact, after saying this isn't a must-win game, the next 2 games are massive. Obviously, Bristol City bouncing back from a defeat. See if those first 2 games were a fluke or not, which I really don't think they are. They were our best performances of the season, but we need a home win and pretty much immediately, and we need to play well at home and to be confident at home, and that's why Hull City on, was it Tuesday night or Wednesday night? Tuesday night is
Valentine's
huge.
night.
Yeah.
Valentine's night. It's a chance for us all to fall back in love.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, love it.
Isn't that
Right.
lovely?
There we go. So 5 wins out of 5, and then the 93-point train will leave the station.
How long are we going to keep this going for with the points?
No, it's going to be
literally down to 70 or something.
It's a perfect way of counting down how many points Norwich can possibly achieve. So it's absolutely perfect. The train is just a different train. They're all lined up, all in sort of 1-point intervals. Some of them won't even get a mention. I pray for the 95 and 94-point trains.
That's gone. Yes, that's left the station.
They have gone.
Another reason why the run that Liam talks about is quite important is how many points do you think we've taken off the current top 6, the top of your head, this season?
What's the current?
One.
So that's, it's 2, I think, which I think was a point against Sheffield United and a point against West Brom. Neither of which were particularly brilliant performances, and we've lost the other 7. So actually, against anyone who's any good at all, we don't tend to be great, but I think we can rack up points against the considerable amount of dross that there is in the Championship.
That's okay. No, it's okay. But Blackburn is. Oh no. Yeah.
There was also a tweet I saw recently outlining our record against teams who have come down with.
Steve, that was one of yours.
Oh, was it one of yours?
It may have been, yeah.
It was.
We've nine
not
defeats
great.
out of 9, yeah. Which I don't know what to read into that, other than, again,
Yes, you do.
We're not very good. Is that the main takeaway from that? I don't know.
Existential crisis. What are Norwich City? Answers on a postcard, and then I'll probably have to write, 8,000 words on it. I think we're probably done for discussion points. We've done very well. Are there any comments? We didn't go to the comments at halftime because halftime was more like, the 85th minute in terms of this podcast. But how are the comments looking, Steve?
As we've asked them. Well, in terms of positivity, Nolly says the positive is we're in the mix of about 11 teams for the playoffs. Going to be a roller coaster ride. Well, there's something in that, right? There's everything. Yeah. Every game's exciting now.
I feel like I should apologise because I have a lack of energy for that, But come next week, good old victory over Bristol City. I'll be all over the 93-point train. I promise. We'll be back on it. It's fine. Just give me this week. I've got a cough. Carry on.
It's because you're tired of these away trips, isn't it, Michael?
I love them. Which band am I going to listen to when I go to Bristol? Don't answer that question. It's not rhetorical. Don't worry.
Maybe the Wings, the band the Beatles wanted to be.
Yeah. Wings and John Lennon's solo career. You can just keep it.
I did wonder about going through the solo careers. Anyway, yes. Any more, or is that it?
We did ask for terrible Norwich City goals that we've conceded, and there were a few of those, as you might imagine. I don't remember this one, but Andy Linnigan kicking the ball in his own goal when he could clear it. I mean, that sounds hilarious. I don't know who was against.
Obviously, there's the Rob Ullathorne back pass to Brian Gunn as well.
Mm-hmm. Why are we doing this? This is when I worked at Archant. These are the ones we didn't want to do, like the worst listicles of the worst goals. And
well, we're all about wallowing in the misery here.
Yes.
Costa's last game of last season against Tottenham. I can't even remember what they were.
Which one?
I feel there was some bad ones in there, weren't there?
Bad goals.
Andy Wilcox says Emmy versus Watford at home. Bit harsh, lost it on the halfway line, but second minute or whatever it was.
Second minute of a must-win game, yeah.
And this one just brimming with disrespect. Didn't even get named. Mark Boast, the Aussie keeper we had for the Colchester game in League One. Whole team was calamitous. You can't have a worst anything without bringing that up, can you? And then in terms of, do we want one more kind of question?
Yeah, go on.
Because we haven't talked about this guy yet really much today, and it's another plug for your piece, Michael. So DW says, what kind of midfielder is Sarah looking like being? Would love to see a Tifo pizza chart.
DW, I will try and work. I can't magic a pizza chart up right now. I'll try and see. Hang on. I'm going to write it down on here on my pad that I obviously pay huge attention to. The ideas on here are amazing, by the way. There's pages of them. Gabby, Sarah, I'm just writing this down. Pizza chart. Otherwise, I'll just order a pizza. There we go. I will see if I can find one. Or I'll have to ask someone to do one for some reason. But I think I'm a bit hit and miss with Gabriel Sarah because he's a £10 million player playing in the Championship. So I almost feel like I'm a bit harsh on him because I'm like, this guy needs to be looking good because he should do, really. But I thought he obviously looked a bit short against Burnley, but he was literally almost playing in midfield on his own, I thought, for most of the game. So you maybe sort of expect that. But I think he looks strong. I think he can really pick a pass, and he's just got really intelligent movement into the box. And that's sort of a really dynamic element that hasn't always been in Norwich's midfield. So I really like him. He's an interesting one, actually, because there were sort of a couple of random transfer links that just sort of popped up as chatter with, I think, was it Torino? It was someone in Serie A, wasn't it? And I could see if Norwich's season does unravel a bit, I imagine he might have the people around him who would maybe see what else was out there for him, because I would think he's here to play at the Oh no, that's a horrible cliche. To play at the best level he can. Well, unlike all the other players who don't. But you know what I mean. I think he will try and probably be better the Championship, and would have hoped that it would have been better this year. So it'll be an interesting one. But I like him as a player, and I also would expect to like him as a player because, in theory, he's an expensive one. So yeah. But is that me being harsh? Am I being a bit harsh? Someone interject.
I guess it's not the price tag isn't his fault, is it? But it's a lot of money for Norwich City Football Club, isn't it? But I think he's probably ahead of development compared to, say, Mario was, or Tribal was, or Steeperman was in their first season in. And I appreciate they didn't come in with that price tag, but they came in, especially Steeperman, who came from Borussia Dortmund Academy originally. They came in with relatively high expectation. I think Sarah's probably a little bit ahead of where those guys were at this stage. He looks a bit of an upgrade on Kenny to me. I think looks really. I think he's an intelligent footballer. Picks up space really well. 2-footed as well, and can carry the ball really well. Which I think, and that midfield's been missing someone. A Mario, if he could have carried the ball as well as Kenny or Sarah, would have been an excellent Premier League footballer. And I think we've been missing that kind of box to box that Sarah brings.
Oh, Mario's left foot. Just reminding me of Mario's left foot. I think on that note, we're done, aren't we? Are we done? Everyone happy?
Yep. Just another one from Marquez, who says maybe you could listen to Portishead on your way to Bristol, which is a good chat, I think.
I'm going to note that down next to my Gabby Sarah pizza chart.
Is that because they're from Bristol, aren't they?
Well,
Portishead is very close to Bristol.
Yeah, I think they're either from Portishead or from Bristol.
Maybe that's what you can do, Michael. You can pick a band from every.
I would end up with something really bad at some way. I mean, I'm not going to last 2 minutes with. Anyway, what are the remaining trips we've got? Where have we got to go?
Well, West Brom, you could do like
the Specials.
Yeah, or maybe Led Zeppelin. Were they from around there? I feel like.
Oh, I feel like
they're Midlands.
Yeah.
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Wigan.
Ooh.
That one for next week's podcast. Anyone out there?
Yeah.
Who are the who are the musicians I should listen to relative to the respective away trips? Wigan, Millwall, Huddersfield, Stoke, Blackburn, Middlesbrough, QPR, West Brom. There you go.
Some selection then.
I know, right?
Stoke, I feel, is going to be interesting.
Robbie Williams is from Stoke, isn't he? Yes, back-to-back Robbie Williams.
Angels all the way up.
Huge Port Vale fan, so would that be massively offensive?
Is Port Vale in? I never really know what Port Vale is. Is that in Stoke? Or
Yeah, it's in Stoke. As somebody that has that lived in Stoke for a whole year, Port Vale is very much in the city of Stoke-on-Trent.
And they all have big fights when there's a derby. There you go. That's my Stoke knowledge. No offense. Right, we're done. That is it for another On the Ball, the Norwich City podcast that hopes the Robins feel what Robins felt last time we were on the road. That's a Mark Robins commentary. Oof. Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? If you're yet to do so, make sure you subscribe via your podcast player of choice. The pod is available free for everyone on your usual player. Free. And we stream free. And we stream the recording of the podcast free, live in video form on my social media channels each Monday evening. Have a search, and I'm sure you'll find them. Search Michael Bailey and Norwich City. I think that was what was defined as the best possible search in future, just in case. Ratings and reviews, wherever prompted, are always hugely appreciated. And if you want to get in touch with any questions or topic proposals, sling me a direct message on Twitter at Michael J. Bailey. My DMs are open. I think that's the official terminology there. As for this evening, a big thank you to our guests tonight on a stellar podcast. Liam, your debut is over. Thank you so much for joining us. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah. Do you want to bother again, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it again. Yeah, I've got next week's guest. I'll have to try and follow in his footsteps, won't I, and do a little bit better, maybe.
Well, let's see.
Won't give it away.
We do have another former media team member joining us on the pod. I'm going to have to start apologizing to the ones who have left and we haven't had on the pod yet, really, because that's probably a smaller number. It's all part of the fun, though. Brilliant, Liam. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll definitely get you on again. Do not worry about that. Dan, thank you so much for the fun.
Thank you. And enjoyable as ever. Although it is making me feel old, all these younger former Norwich City content members coming on the podcast.
This is the industry I work in and you work in, Dan. So there we go. Well, it's a very good performance from your good self. So well done. Hopefully Norwich follow in your footsteps. Steve, thank you as always for stellar commenting and talking.
Thank you, and sorry that I'm not a member of the Norwich City media team. Just some weirdo with a stats Twitter account.
That's why you're so important, Steve. Otherwise, it would be a monopoly. So you are
takes all
needed.
sorts, right?
It does indeed. Right. Well, we are done. We'll be back next Monday. Not exactly sure on the time because there's a meeting going on, isn't there? Which I've just twigged. It's the same time as next week's podcast. So we'll figure that one out.
And there's a game the next night.
And then there's a game.
That doesn't matter, Dan. It's all about this meeting. It's the big one.
And the game is the game on the Tuesday. Okay, we'll do a pop. We'll be back next time, whenever that is, for another befuddling installment of the On the Ball Norwich City podcast, which, I mean, that is quite befuddling, really, isn't it? Until then, though, never mind the danger. And there we are, another triumph of On the Ball podcasting. Thank you all for watching. If you're still with us, much appreciated as always. Thanks to these guys. Did a stellar turn, everyone. Well done. Yeah, good. And we will we'll see you next week. I don't know when or where or how, but somehow we will do another podcast. So we're going to sign off now. Everyone's going to wave. We'll see you later. Go wave. There they are. Look at it. See you later. Bye-bye, everyone. Cheerio. Until next time.